ARPA funds. So, so it's less formal than our traditional regular meetings. However, I am going to open this meeting so that when we go right into the next council meeting, we're all set to go. So for the record, it is 5:03 p.m. Today is Monday, October 4th. Again, this is a public forum for the purposes of soliciting public input on the proposed spending plan for the American Rescue Funds allocation to the city of Torrington. Before we open the meeting to the public, could we please stand and pledge the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So has everyone here had a chance to review the slides that were put up on the website? I'm seeing shaking heads. So I'll just pull this up, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I think last time it took me almost 40 minutes to go through it. I'm just going to touch on the highlights, the 1,000 feet allocation.
Okay, I don't know how to do it.
You don't have it.
It's there. It's saved on the desktop.
Is
Good thing one of them is the allocation for increasing our IT.
Exactly. This is exactly. This was a
Oh, there it is.
Got it.
It's none of these things. It's on the desktop.
I'm just going to text Rista and see if she could pull it up for us.
Can you help me?
Is there an IT support?
On the desktop.
Is it possible for you to open it up from the phone?
Yeah, or yeah. Okay. Right here. It's right here.
There it is. Nice job, Andrew.
To the rescue, as
Oh my
usual.
goodness. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Oh, it had to be open. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. So just very quickly, next slide, please. For everybody's information, the city of Torrington is receiving the sum of $10,074,000. This is the old one. That's $10,074.
It is.
It is actually $10,074,000 we are receiving. We've already received the first tranche, which is, the first half of $5,037,000. We'll receive the second half of those funds in June of 2022. And our Torrington Board of Education, separate and apart from the $10 million that's coming on the municipal side, received almost $6 million for educational purposes. So next slide. Our funding objectives, they are very specific. And even though this is just the interim guidance, there is no reason to believe that any of the funding objectives are going to change. The primary purpose of these funds is to support the public health response to the pandemic. There is a guidance that allows the municipality to recover any lost municipal revenue. We can utilize the funds to address any negative economic impacts. Economic impacts include to impacted industries such as tourism, hospitality, small businesses, local families. It allows for premium pay for essential workers. And it also allows for water and sewer or broadband improvements. Next slide. So very quickly, we went through the methodology for determining whether or not there was any lost revenue from the municipality. Many of you are already aware that the city of Torrington has a private tax collector. We did not experience any delay or any losses of revenue as a result of taxes. We're a small municipality. We don't have public golf courses or any of those amenities that other municipalities are able to charge fees for. So we didn't lose any of revenues along that line. So based on our analysis, working through our long-term recovery committee and our department heads, we are advancing no recommendation for funding in this guidance or this funding objective. Next slide, please. Premium pay for essential workers. This again was very specific to prioritize low and moderate income workers, key sectors of healthcare, grocery, food services, education, childcare, sanitation, and transit. What we were looking at when we were reviewing all of the possible uses of these funds was that each one of these industries could, if they needed the support, come to the municipality and apply for funding under the aid to impacted industries. So we were not going to make any recommendations at this time for premium pay for essential workers. Next slide. Support for the public health response. This is rather broad. It was specific to assisting with vaccinations, testing, medical care, contact tracing, quarantining costs, capacity enhancements. These capacity enhancements, case in point, when the hospital was meeting its maximum occupancy for beds, needed to stand up an emergency overflow hospital situation. That's a capacity enhancement. When we needed to increase the capacity for vaccinations, and we activated the armory for that, those are capacity enhancements. We can also use these for behavioral healthcare services, including mental health or substance misuse treatment and crisis intervention. And that equity-focused services could be broadly applied in a qualified census tract. And the city, a qualified census tract is lower socioeconomic demographic. And we do have 3 of those qualified census tracts in the city of Torrington. Next slide. So immediately off the top, we were working with the Board of Education through our budget process, and they had budgeted a considerable allocation or appropriation for English as a second language, teachers, paras, tutors, and social workers at THS and TMS. And that was to readdress or address, I should say, engagement and emotional support for kids. So right away, we knew that these funds were very easily translatable for those expenses. And during the budget process, made the commitment to appropriate $569,281, or 6% of the total $10 million. Those funds have already been set aside, and the Board of Education is already appropriating expenses against that line item. Next slide, please. So this is where I'm going to leave it very high level. So Torrington's spending plan for infrastructure improvements that directly respond to the health care crisis. We are proposing that 53% of the funds, or roughly $5.3 million, will be used to provide infrastructure improvements within the city buildings, specifically as they relate to ventilation, HVAC systems, ADA access, capacity enhancements to the armory to accommodate any future emergencies or future needs for enhanced capacity. We are committed to providing Charlotte Hungerford Hospital funding to establish a temporary public health clinic for booster vaccinations and for a longer-term community health clinic that will be established at Copark with a targeted approach to going into neighborhoods and finding those families and individuals that are in need of healthcare that are not accessing it. Emergency management and our public safety radio system, it became increasingly clear during the pandemic that an antiquated communication system it created lapses in time. It created inefficiencies in our ability to communicate instantaneously, whether it was communicating a revised executive order from the governor's office or an emergency that was taking place in the city. So we are committing funds to establish a fully articulated, interoperable radio system that'll include Board of Education, Torrington Area Health District, Police, Fire, and all of the city departments. Social care providers feasibility study. What we determined during the pandemic is all of our social care providers that are doing God's work and providing assistance to our homeless population, to provide families who are food insecure, access to food, to provide health care or mental health support. We found that many of them are working in silos. And in some cases, there was overlap in services, and in more cases, there were gaps in services. So we have been meeting with all of the social care provider agencies and have come to the conclusion that a feasibility study that does asset mapping, who does what, what are their resources to accomplish that, and where are the shortcomings. And from that feasibility study, we hope that sometime over the next 5 years, when these funds are accessible, the funds can be used more focused and more intentionally in solving some of the gaps or eliminating some of the overlap. We're also looking into a feasibility study for the public safety complex, which will improve our emergency response. We have a police department that is functioning out of a 110-year-old building that was built to be a school and is now barely functioning as a police department building. We have an emergency operations center that is functioning out of our 1960s fire headquarters. And we have ambulance that's, separate. It's a contractor of the city, but, they're functioning out of satellite facilities. So we want to undertake a feasibility study as to what would it look like to bring all of those services under one campus, and where would the efficiencies be found? Where would the economies be found? And how can we streamline many of those services? And we did not want to overlook the fact that water and sewer infrastructure improvements are necessary for economic development in the city of Torrington. We know that I've been working for the last 3 years with a couple of property owners that are just, just this close to moving forward with a business park or another industrial park, which creates jobs, which creates stability. And these funds were specifically earmarked for those improvements. So we didn't want to discount the fact that those would be helpful to the municipality for long-term resiliency as it relates to jobs and healthcare. Next slide, please. After recognizing or looking at all of those infrastructure improvements, which by the way included, I said police department, fire department, it's Co-Park, it's our Sullivan Senior Center. When we sent all of our seniors home and they were, isolated, we know that there's improvements that will provide faster access to the public buildings. And so we can catch any of the individuals that may be falling behind or slipping through the cracks. So after we had finished all of that, we said, we really need to push funds back out into the community. We, through this long-term recovery committee, Rista Malanka and Michael Menard from LARP were the co-chairs. It was a committee we established, I think by May, we had made the decision that long-term recovery doesn't start after the pandemic is over. It starts when the pandemic is hot. You're identifying gaps and needs and where there may be resources that could very easily be repurposed or reallocated. So in May, the long-term recovery committee started meeting and they started to identify where funds would be very helpful in establishing resiliency within the community. As we looked at the great need that we have within this community, we also recognize that as a municipality, we're not in the business of giving out grants. It's not our forte, it's not our strength. It makes no sense for us to hire somebody to do that. We have resources in this community that do this. They do this on a regular basis and they do it very well. We did have a meeting with Guy Ravesi from the Northwest Connecticut Community Foundation to talk about, what we can do to establish this grant funding pool, and then from there drill down to what is it that those grants, what are the parameters for those grants. What we do know is that we need to provide grants to the businesses and impacted industries. We need to provide grants to the nonprofits. Those are the organizations that address the unmet needs that were identified throughout this process, to increase efficiencies within their organization or increase efficiencies with some cross-pollination between agencies. When we talked about those impacted industries, some of those are also not-for-profits. They're not all business. We look at Kids Play, we look at the Warner Theater, we look at our 5 Points Art Center, we look at the Nutmeg Conservatory, we look at Primetime, PAL, our Historical Society. So all of these fall under this pool of money, and we wanted to make sure that we were being thoughtful in what we're trying to accomplish with these. We also recognized that there are a significant number of funding opportunities out there outside of our American Rescue Plan money. The state has established a number of funding streams to assist tenants and landlords, to assist small businesses, to assist some of the shuttered stages initiatives. So we thought that it would be very wise for us to invest as a piece of the grant funding, a community resource navigator that we envision as an individual who would be intimately familiar with all of those other grant funds, whether it's rental assistance, legal aid for evictions, workforce training programs, access to food resources, the SNAP program, or fuel assistance. So this individual would be able to meet with our community members and help them identify where other resources are available, and if necessary, assist them with any of those application processes. So we're calling that our community resource navigator. We've also worked with our Regional Workforce Investment Bureau in developing a workforce development program. This is a program that would provide training and job connections. We have over 1,500 unfilled jobs in the Torrington area. That's 1,500 unfilled jobs. Many of the manufacturers that Rista and I have been meeting with one-on-one have identified that it's been very difficult to recruit individuals to come back to work, to come to work. It is less about training. It's more about transportation. It's more about daycare. It's more about just being aware of where those jobs are, some of the hurdles that prevent them from accessing those jobs. So we're working with the Workforce Investment Bureau to develop that program, and then building stronger communities through investment in housing. When the pandemic hit and our schools sent all of the children home because it was safer for them to be home and learn remotely, what we also recognize is that home for many of these children predate 1970, and those homes suffer from lead paint, asbestos, mold, and other environmental concerns that exacerbate many of the health conditions that keep our children from going to school on a regular basis anyways. I was just reading an article about the uptick in lead paint poisoning among the elementary age school student. So through this program, we are proposing that a portion of these funds be set aside and that we would work with the Torrington Area Health District in establishing what that abatement program would look like, whether it is a revolving loan fund that landlords can access to do the remediation that's necessary, or grants. But again, looking to grease a wheel, not reinvent the wheel, utilize those agencies that are strong, they've been doing this on a regular basis, and let them take the lead in helping us identify how we can best use those resources. In addition to the $3.6 million, we are looking to appropriate $400,000 of that. That is for the grant administration expenses. Our community foundation keeps a very tight ship, and taking on another grant like this that includes so many applications and perhaps meeting with these applicants on a regular basis would require them to increase their bandwidth and their ability to do this. So we recognize that there may be a need to provide funding to offset the additional costs for grant administration. The U.S. Treasury reports, I did just get word over the weekend that our first report, which was due on October 31st, has been extended to April 1st of 2022. But those reports are extremely complicated, time-consuming, and we recognize that the resources we have here within our city offices would not be sufficient to do this justice. So we're recognizing filings that may be required. So we're looking at roughly $400,000. We don't know what that will be. at the end, but we're thinking better to set aside this much, and we can pivot and reappropriate those funds as we need to. Next slide, please. So here we are. This is the special meeting to receive public input on the proposed spending plan. We obviously, after tonight, will need to start working with our partners in creating those grant parameters for business and nonprofits and identify those administrative partners. So we still have quite a bit of work to do. A little of the pressure is off of us because of that October 31st deadline being moved, but it's not really off of us because what we know is our local businesses need these funds now. They don't need these funds 2 years from now. They don't need these funds 4 years from now. They need these funds now. So we're going to try to keep this thing moving along. And your insight will help us determine what that looks like. So with that said, again, nothing formal. This is informal. I want to invite people to come up. We are recording this, so there will be a recording and minutes, but the microphone is open for anybody that wants to karaoke or tell us what their thoughts are. It's always the first one that's hardest. Come on, Dan.
Good afternoon. Dan Farley, city resident, 174 Benham Street, Torrington. I'm also the city treasurer, and I'm a member of the board of directors of the Northwest Connecticut Transit District, and that's the reason I'm here today. Craig Nelson, our director at the Transit Authority, gave this to me and asked if I would present it for him. He's unable to be here today. So it says, Dan, I'm attaching 3 items regarding the ARPA funds. They would be used by the district to provide service through the Dial-A-Ride and RITS programs. The Dial-A-Ride is a door-to-door service. It's a paratransit curb-to-curb service for any persons in the 17 towns that the Northwest Transit District serves. The transportation is provided to nutrition programs, medical appointments, shopping, and for other social and personal purposes. Group excursions are also arranged through the town senior centers. As most of you know, the service over the last couple of years during COVID has pulled back. Part of this was loss of drivers, as well as some funding. And it's an expensive service, costing us just about a little over $200 an hour. Funds from the American Recovery Plan can be used by the transit district to help bring these services back. If each town could give a minimum of $10,000, it would help the residents of the district greatly. Most of the funding for this service comes from the state, supplemented by any other funds that the Northwest Connecticut Transit District can find. Some of the municipalities give a small amount through the local share. This year, we did not receive the Western Connecticut Aging Grant that helps us with this service. The other program, the RITS program, stands for Rural Independent Transportation Service. And who is this for? The program's for non-emergency medical trips for the elderly and disabled. For example, dialysis, radiation, pulmonary rehab, etc. All these programs right now are underfunded. We need to keep a short day, accepting no trips after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We just don't have the funds to do it. I did ask for in the budget for the state to extend that to 3 p.m. All they did was increase last year's budget by 3%, which does not cover the increase in fuel alone. And he just gave me a couple of examples here for the American Restoration Plan, page 26795, aid to impacted industries, including tourism, travel, and hospitality. And under that, on that page, it's listed aid to impacted industries, section 602C, 1A, and 603C, 1A. They recognize that certain industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality were disproportionately and negatively impacted by the COVID-19 public health emergency. Aid provided to tourism, travel, and hospitality industries should respond to the negative impacts the pandemic put on us and similar impacted industries. And lastly, on page 26822, under section 7, it talks about nonprofits, assistance to nonprofit organizations, including loans, grants, in-kind assistance, technical assistance, or other services that responds to the negative economic impacts of the COVID-19 public health emergency. And lastly, section 9, same page, aid to impacted industries, aid to tourism, travel, hospitality, and other impacted industries that responds to the negative economic impacts of the COVID-19 public health emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And the document Dan is reading from is the interim final rule, which is the document that explains the entire bill. We would even go so far as to say transportation has been identified as one of the big hurdles to getting the workforce to our various manufacturers. So while you didn't list that in there, I think that that would be another reason why we need to think about that.
Exactly.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have questions for Dan before he? Carol does. Carol does.
No, I'm going to go next.
Okay, Carol wants to go next.
I've been asked to read Mr. Candeffer's comments into the record. Torrington's proposed use of coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds by Torrington resident Thomas Candeffer. There's 6 paragraphs. 1, flexibility. I'd recommend establishing a significant amount for contingencies, perhaps 10%. First, the interim final rule, IRF, is subject to possible changes when the final rule is published. Secondly, the IRF cautions that the response to the COVID-19 public health emergency has changed and will continue to change over time. In addition, half the funds will not be available until next June. I see the city plan as a working document with perhaps semi-annual adjustments. At this time, select the most pressing uses and start those. Number 2, fill gaps. The governor has developed a plan to use the state allocation of $2.6 billion, 2/3 of which they hope to use to help balance the budget over the next 2 years. As it covers the same range of eligible uses, this plan is worth reviewing to see whether the city should supplement locally some of the state uses and/or focus on other urgent community needs. Some examples are: 1, the state plans to allocate $103.2 million to $130 million to address workforce development needs, including job training and support, career pathways, and system redesign under a Rework Connecticut initiative. The city's workforce development programs should leverage what the state will provide. And 2, the state plans to use $7 million over a 3-year period for a health and safety barrier remediation program, also called Weatherization Barrier Remediation Program, which deals with mold, asbestos, antiquated wiring, as well as lead in homes. This program is meant as a prelude to qualifying homes for the well-established weatherization programs. The city plan lists the Torrington Area Health Department and lead abatement program, so some coordination may be worthwhile. 3, big ticket items. Torrington's plan has 2 big allotments, $5.3 million and $3.6 million. Any items listed under those 2 categories requiring a substantial amount, say greater than 20% of funds, should be identified for the benefit of the council and public to evaluate more closely. As I understand, you have target ranges for each line item. Where possible, it would be desirable to make partial allotments staggered over time, rather than getting locked in to committing to a total amount for the 2-year period. Here again, flexibility to adapt to potential changing needs. And 4, premium pay for essential workers. It was encouraging to read that the governor plans, 1, to allocate $12.5 million for a second round of incentive payment for direct care nursing home employees, and 2, to recommend $10 million for premium pay for frontline state employees. I'll leave it to others to make the case for local supplemental benefits. 5, water and sewer infrastructure. While the city's measure for improvements to facilitate development of industrial park private development may meet the broad guidelines of the IRF for this category and does not need to respond directly to the health emergency, there may be better choices from the WPCA Capital Improvement Program. I'd rather see improvements to pumping stations and existing distribution lines, as these upgrades would be an excellent complement to our major treatment plant improvements and would be a benefit to a broader segment of our community. And 6, improving outdoor spaces. The U.S. Treasury, in their frequently asked questions, which clarifies the IRF, states that investments in a variety of outdoor spaces can be an eligible use under the category of responding to the public health emergency or its negative economic impact. The CDC has confirmed that COVID-19 spreads significantly less in an outdoor setting, where the physical and mental benefits are well documented. People in record numbers have sought these safe outdoor spaces to the extent that some parks and trails had to be closed to some users when capacity levels were reached. So a need has been identified for well-maintained facilities as well as their expansion. One example of a park needing major improvement is Charlene Susan Bessie Park. The use of ARPA funds would expedite the rehab that the city already has planned. The frequently asked question also states that assistance to small businesses could include support to enhance outdoor spaces for COVID-19 mitigation. If funds were available, restaurants could benefit by upgrading to durable outdoor facilities. I recommend a line item for improving outdoor spaces.
Thank you, Carol. All right, the floor is still open from the public. Christine.
Good evening, Christina Emery, Executive Director of Primetime House here in Torrington. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and also thank you for recognizing the need to support social services at this critical time. And I think it's important to note that, we're not just a charity, we are a business. We employ local residents. We do business with other for-profit entities in town. And we have the same challenges, meeting payroll, buying PPE, paying bills as our for-profit partners do. And our employees are really on the front lines. They're out there providing essential services despite very low pay. And we're grateful that your plan does include a component to help nonprofits meet the increased demand that we're seeing really every day. As Executive Director of Primetime House, we support neighbors living with a serious mental illness. And we have just seen the need for our services grow exponentially. Those that we support are in real crisis. They've been set back tremendously during COVID. Social isolation was very devastating to them. Many didn't have access to telehealth, telemedicine due to technology, or they weren't interested in talking to a therapist over a screen. They also lacked in-person medical care, access to food, and access to AA meetings, just a few examples. We tried to fill that gap as best we can during that time. One of the programs we provide now is called a homeless prevention program, where we help families and individuals remain in their apartments before they're evicted and enter our homeless system. We have case management services. We help them find jobs. We help do apartment searches, and we help connect them to financial aid programs like Unite CT. However, if you search today on Zillow, there are 6 apartments that show up today in Torrington. That's just one, you know, there might be other marketing places, but we are at a severe lack of safe, affordable, decent apartments. So I just want to bring that to your attention. And that's really impacting our ALICE families, our asset limited, income constrained, employed. It's not, you know, the people that are already homeless obviously are in crisis, but so are these families that are just a month away from eviction. One of our programs is connecting individuals to employment opportunities in the community. And, you know, we know that there's barriers. We heard from about transportation, there's also childcare, educational needs, but another barrier in our opinion is benefits counseling. We know that people want to get back to work, but these families are afraid. They don't want to make $50 too much and lose all their SNAP benefits. So there's a real fear, and having access to somebody locally that can help counsel people on how to go back to work, but still maintain some safety net until you are financially secure is critical. The resource navigator, again, we see that as critical. We've been really inundated with people, not just people we already support, but people literally calling us, hearing about us through friends, knocking on our door saying, I don't know where to begin. And it's taken up a lot of our staff's time. And these are, again, people that we are supporting. So we're doing our best to connect them, but without having a, you know, municipal social worker or one central point, it becomes difficult. And we're doing our best to connect them as best we can, but it's a difficult process. People need to know where to go for housing insecurity, food insecurity, mental health, substance abuse. You know, one single point of reference would be so much valued. And I just want to thank you for including social service agencies, recognizing the need that, you know, the services we provide are essential, and partnering with us and allowing us to be part of your long-term recovery plan. So happy to entertain questions.
Questions? I keep forgetting we have a couple of council members on the screen. Thank you, Christina. Andrew.
Almost said good morning. Good evening, everybody. So my name is Andrew Lyon. I am a homeowner. I am the coordinator for, homeowner here in Torrington. I'm the coordinator for the Torrington Awareness and Prevention Partnership. It's a youth substance use prevention coalition here in Torrington. I am the director of prevention services at the McCall Center for Behavioral Health, and I am soon to be a dad. So I am both professionally and personally interested in really, you know, the way that these funds are used and really, you know, the impact that you know, this wonderful resource that we have here, you know, is going to play in the community. I do want to a few things before I start. I apologize, I don't have any kind of prepared remarks. I figured I'd just, you know, speak to what I know. And then also, please don't construe anything that I say as me advocating for any specific changes or any line items or any changes in the way things vote. I just want to kind of, you know, make just a few remarks to really kind of underscore some of the concerns that we have. I think the biggest thing that, you know, we're really concerned about, you know, I'm really concerned about in my, you know, professional and personal perspective is the long-term implications that this pandemic will have on the mental health of children all the way through adults. This is something that is not going to end when the pandemic is declared over. It's something that we're going to see for decades. You know, the Great Depression defined a generation. I guarantee you this will also define a generation, and we're going to see all sorts of changes, all sorts of increased needs, resource strains that are going to come from this. And the mayor, you know, pointed out when she was talking about the feasibility study for the social service providers. You know, you're not wrong that there, you know, maybe some duplications, but there are also a lot of gaps. And a lot of those gaps have to do with the fact that nonprofits, particularly in the mental health, substance use treatment, behavioral health, arena, are year over year asked to do more with less. Prevention services, something that I oversee directly. Our department is 100% dependent on grant funding. Grants that are becoming less and less common, increasingly competitive, restrictions on the funding, the way it can be used, really restrict how we're able to provide the skills that we have in the community. And so, I guess just sort of broadly speaking, there is a lot of money that the federal government goes and pays to universities and research firms to really figure out what works, what is best practice for addressing any issue. And, we can say that we know, there is evidence out there to show what works for the issues we see, whether it's, substance use prevention, whether it's opioid use treatment, running the gamut. The problem tends to be the local implementation. And so, an unapologetic plug from a call, we have a ton of experts, a ton of qualified professionals that provide amazing services. We have some other Primetime House, they do some great stuff. A lot of people here, and I know a lot of us in this room know a lot of these agencies I'm talking about, but what really, a lot of times a disconnect is getting the resources to allow us to provide those services, to connect to the individuals that need it. And so I think really in my kind of long, rambly, disconnected, speech up here, I think what we really want to make sure that we're thinking about when we look at these $10 million+ is how we can create a sustainable system of resource providers in the community to really address these issues that we know are going to be with us for a long time. Torrington is blessed with a lot of very high quality service providers. A lot of us are, pointed to nationally for some of the work that we're doing, some of the ideas that we're coming up with, and some of our the application and services and the way we're kind of going about, providing these resources to individuals in need. And, I just think that it's important for us to really, really, really think about how we can really smartly utilize these resources to enhance and sustain, the existing resources that we have. So I think I've rambled enough.
No, thank you. Very well said.
Thank you.
Floor is open. Yes, Mr. Fontana.
Good evening, Jim Fontana from Torrington. And thanks for the committee's work on this project and the opportunity to speak before you. But I'd like to apply for, on behalf of several landlords who've had tenants who've claimed to have COVID, claimed to be quarantining, and refused to pay rent because of their governor's moratorium on rent, and who would just state to you that I don't have to pay because you can't evict me. So there's been a great loss for myself. Unfortunately, we're not, the plan aims to give a lot of relief to tenants and landlords. In a lot of our cases, specifically in my case, not eligible for the Homeowners Assistance Fund because you need a financial institution mortgage to apply to that, for that relief. I don't fall into that category. Emergency Rental Assistance Fund. Unfortunately, you need your tenant to still be in the premises and to also complete the application process for that. In my case, my tenant was incarcerated, removed from the apartment, so she's no longer a tenant, and she will not cooperate, of course, in applying for any of the funds. So it kind of puts me in a lurch there and trying to provide affordable, safe housing in Torrington. This particular house was a foreclosure, empty for 3 years, which we rehabbed. and made available for housing. Not only did we lose the 10 months of rent, but there's a great deal of damage done there. So we were harmed financially, significantly. It affected our ability to use this money to possibly purchase and refurb another blighted, foreclosed house and bring it back up to standards and provide housing. I would like to consider any kind of funds or grants that would help the landlords.
Thank you. Yeah, when we talk about those grant applications and we talk about those parameters, I don't think we've drilled down exactly, what those small businesses are. So it's not to say that that isn't entirely possible, but those are the next steps. And I do appreciate you bringing that forward for us. All right, thank you. Oh, you have a question? Questions from the floor? I mean,
Thank you, Mayor Carbone.
Yeah, probably less of a question, but more of we have many nonprofits in the room, from McCall's to Prime Time, and there's probably a few others, but I think there is an obligation on the part of the social service agencies that have individuals in independent housing to pay those rents. And maybe the application process can go through those social services, to ensure that rents are paid. But you bring up a really, interesting
I've worked with Title VIII. 75% of our tenants are minorities. Mm-hmm. We've worked with the programs. This particular one is disturbing because it falls between the cracks.
Yeah.
This one.
No, I appreciate your perspective and those of the social services that are here, but I know that I would agree with Andrew. We do have, as an asset, some really strong, reputable nonprofits to support people to live independently. But I also think it's an obligation of those social services to ensure that they have safe, affordable housing and that rents are paid. But
yeah, I agree. We try to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you as well for bringing that to our attention. There's so much to think about. Yeah, that's another aspect that we will.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Still open. Mark.
Good evening, Mayor Carbone, members of the City Council. I'm Mark McCarron. I'm Executive Director of the Torrington Historical Society, and more importantly, Dan Farley's neighbor at 182 Benham Street. I'm here today actually representing 3 of Torrington's not-for-profit organizations. And I know this isn't the venue to relate a specific funding proposal. Nevertheless, I would like to state the case in the hopes that this type of project can be included in Torrington's spending plan under outdoor recreation, education, and tourism. So this is a project that is being proposed by the Torrington Historical Society as owner of the John Brown Birthplace, 5 Points Arts Center, owner of the property on University Drive, and also the Torrington Trails Network, which is a subsidiary of the YMCA. So I have a letter that I'll submit, and it's signed by myself, Judy McAlone, Executive Director of 5 Point Arts, and Mark Linehan, a committee member with the Torrington Trails Network. We, the undersigned, have an important project to propose for funding under the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Funds of the American Rescue Plan, specifically a boardwalk connecting the John Brown Birthplace with the 5 Points Arts Center. It is our understanding that investments in outdoor recreation may be responsive to community needs by promoting safe outdoor recreation to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Accordingly, we propose funding for a project that involves the collaborative efforts of the 3 organizations that I mentioned. All 3 organizations are interested in developing a walking trail that would connect the John Brown Birthplace to 5 Points Arts Center. The connecting trail has also been identified by the Torrington Trails Network as the western terminus of a longer trail that would eventually connect with Stillwater Pond and continue east to Sunnybrook Park. There are some very unique and interesting aspects to a connecting trail between John Brown Birthplace and the 5 Point Arts Center. Namely, the trail would cross a stunningly beautiful forest wetland by means of a boardwalk, and the trail would also feature art installations related to environmental awareness that would be sponsored by 5 Points Arts. So a property survey is scheduled for next month prior to seeking approval from the Torrington Inland Wetlands Commission to begin construction of the trail. The trail will be unique in the region as it will provide the public with an opportunity for outdoor recreation that connects an important historic site to contemporary art installations by means of a boardwalk through the wetland that I mentioned a moment ago. Over the next few months, the project committee will be developing cost specifications for the boardwalk so that construction can take place in 2022. Concurrently, 5 Points Arts will be working on art installations, and volunteers from the Torrington Trails Network will be constructing other portions of the connecting trail. We're going to be seeking financial support from the recovery program for the construction of the boardwalk. Funding for the boardwalk will ensure that the public will have safe access to art, history, and a very special part of our natural environment. And we also anticipate that this trail will bring more tourists to Torrington, and that tourism spending will help Torrington's economic recovery from the coronavirus. Any questions?
Any questions?
No,
I know this is more of a dialogue. This is, I think we're so accustomed to public input, people talk and we listen. This is a dialogue, so questions fire away.
I love the whole idea. I know I've talked about with Judy, and I've talked about with Torrington Trails people, and I just love connecting our trails. We have a phenomenal system of trails already, and just to make those trails broader from here to downtown is going to be an awesome asset.
And as Tom mentioned, during the peak of the coronavirus, all of our trails were actually kind of crowded here in Torrington. Right. And I know it deterred some people from going out, so another trail I think would be a benefit to the city as a whole.
Especially using John Brown as a start point, I think that's amazing. I've already heard some ideas about art installations as well, so I hope this goes over well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting project. I just hope it fits in with the city spending plan.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where I love the idea too, Mark, that I just, I know we can, I'm looking at Rista, there's a lot of creativity I think we can do with some of these potential aspects, but I'm wondering if it might be stretching it for this particular opportunity for funding, but appreciate you bringing it.
Bring it forward for your consideration.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that $3.6 million, that's the grant, and that's where those project-specific proposals would go. And our thought process with those grants is we don't want to make it a complicated grant application process. I'm sure you've filled out enough grant applications to last a lifetime.
Right.
We want to make it as simple as possible, as concise as possible. But I do see that very much as being a part of what may come forward under that $3.6 million.
That's good. So, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. Do you, and that's me personally, ultimately the decisions will be made by this board.
Right.
Because even though we're establishing the $3.6 million of grant funding, and we do hope that this board agrees, it's best to house it with somebody like the Community Foundation, who knows how to do these grants, who can speak to the applicants and process this paperwork. But ultimately, the recommendation comes right back to this council, and this council makes decisions on all of those. So it's
very good.
Good. Did you say you had two others, or did you said you were here representing three? Are there?
Well, 5 Points Arts and Torrington Trails Network.
Okay, so it's just the three in that one letter.
Yep.
Carol, did you get a copy of that?
It was emailed to me. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Thank you.
But do you want me to take that?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I got it too. So okay. I did. Yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
Open. Steph, anything you want to add?
I'll just say very quickly. My name is Steph Burr. I'm the executive director of the Northwest Connecticut Arts Council. And a lot of municipalities around the state are allocating 1% of their funding to the arts. In Torrington, I think that's going to look at about $30,000. But the arts are just known for creating economic opportunity. So, excuse me.
That's okay.
Unmask if you need to.
I'm sucking in air.
Socially distanced.
Yes. You know, we just did a presentation for the Economic Development Summit. And a problem in this region is that there's no infrastructure for money to be funding into the arts. So what we need is to establish some baseline infrastructure so that we can start to work on getting these projects out there. The projects like the mural in downtown Torrington, which we just helped to facilitate. We've heard amazing feedback. We've heard people coming on the mural trail to Torrington. And like the gentleman had said, the tourism, travel, and hospitality industry was disproportionately harmed by the pandemic. So this is something that the arts are the backbone of this industry. It's what's going to bring our downtown back to life. And we just want to do everything we can as the Regional Arts Council to help facilitate this and advocate for arts funding. To even in a small part, artists have such a knack for making a little bit go a long way. So, you know, 1% is what we're advocating for in each municipality. And thank you for your time.
Wait, before you go though, I know, sorry about that. So even when we talk about this cultural district, which is on, I believe on the agenda for tonight, if it's, yes, it is. We see that being a part of the strategy in accessing some of these funds. Do you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, I was completely unprepared to speak tonight. Right. The cultural district is something that is so exciting. This is a new program through the state of Connecticut. There's currently one established, it's in Ridgefield. Torrington is trying to be the second one in the state, which is a huge sense of pride. It's going to come with a lot of intrinsic benefits from the state level, including advanced promotion through the Connecticut Office of Tourism. And these are all benefits that will come at very little cost. So this program, we had been working with the mayor to set up a structure for how it could be run. And it is just going to be incredible for the city. We're going to be doing asset mapping. We're going to be doing, as a part of the Americans for the Arts and Economic Impact Study next year, we're going to be doing a specific economic impact study for the cultural district that will have numbers to come back and prove, you know, out of the $34 million that nonprofit arts organizations bring to this region, we're estimating that about at least 10 to 12 million of that is happening in Torrington. So this is really the cultural center of our region, and the arts are bringing a lot of money into the city, and they're also really elevating the image of the city on the state level.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the
Thank you.
Questions for Steph? No. Excellent.
Right. I appreciate that, Steph. Other questions, comments, thoughts? I know it's kind of intimidating. Look at us sitting back here, but open dialogue. Any ideas, concerns? Any concerns with what we've established as, you know, as our high level process? Because really, that's what we're trying to do, is establish a process with an idea of what those funds could be and should be used for. Nothing else. So I'm just going to give a shameless plug. When we talk about that cultural district and you talk about asset mapping, I just got our publication of the state's Historic Preservation Trust, and our Olmsted Fountain made the publication. Did you see that, Mark? Yeah, there's a nice article. Of course, they got my name wrong. I'm Mayor Ellen Carbone, but you're quoted in there quite a bit. So when we talk about, you know, an investment that might pay back dividends, those are the kinds of things that you might not realize what that little bit of an investment will bring back by way of tourism and hospitality, and our restaurants are filled, our trails are, you know, being used. So we're excited about that. All right. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Krista? Good. And I will say that we continue to have these conversations with businesses. You know, we've been out there meeting. It's not just our manufacturers to talk about what their needs are for workforce. And again, I appreciate the comments from Mr. Candeffer about workforce training, which the state is focused on. But we're finding some of the hurdles to that employment are more local. It's transportation. It's childcare. It's, you know, it's just a local problem. So go ahead. So we are paying very close attention to that. And again, for everybody here, we are required to appropriate these funds by December 31st of 2024. And we have to expend them by December 31st, 2026. So while there's plenty of time for us to push this out to the community, we also recognize that the need is more urgent now. And we want to start establishing some vehicles so that we can start addressing some of those urgent needs. So if there aren't any other questions, council, comments, then
they've covered everything that I know I was thinking about myself, you know, from infrastructure improvements to outdoor recreation to affordable housing questions. So I think we're all pretty much on the same page.
Good. All right, then I'm going to close this public input meeting. I spoke the most, 30 minutes. You guys only took 25. So the council members are available by email or you can contact them through the city clerk's office. And certainly my email is available. If you continue to have thoughts on any of this, nothing is being spent this week other than the $569,000 that we set aside for the Board of Education. So it's still very much a work in progress. So thank you all very much for coming out. All right.
Take a break? Take a break, yeah.